Johnny's love drunk already.
I know, dude. I'm like already gushing. My heart is beating right now. I can barely confess my love for him.
Right here.
Well, Johnny, Chelsea, it is time.
We made it.
Let's do this thing.
We made
Bromance 2020. It's time. Guys, if you're unfamiliar, we do this every year. And what we try to do is give you guys from each position that we will stick with, that these are our guys, that we see them, exceeding ADP, that we see them doing big things for your roster that you can count on. We've done the research. We've researched the heck out of these guys and their situations, and there's just no way that we can come up that they're not going to get it done for you. Now, of course, things happen. We've been wrong on Bromance before. I have fallen, look, love is hard
blind.
sometimes.
Yeah, love is blind,
It's hard. It's hard work, and sometimes people let you down. People that you love the most, they let you down. But this year, we're pretty confident in the guys we've got, and we're going to bring them to you right away. We're starting with the tight end position. Johnny, take it away, brother. Who is your bromance for 2020 at the tight end position?
My bromance at the 2020 position, or my bromance at the tight end position in 2020 is
Johnny's love drunk already.
I know, dude. I'm like already gushing. My heart is beating right now. I can barely confess my love for him. And that is tight end Jonnu Smith from Tennessee. Listen, you can get this guy super late in drafts, and I am going to build my confidence in Jonnu Smith for you. Or I don't know. I'm just going to jump into this. Love just doesn't make sense right now. Once Ryan Tannehill became the Tennessee Titans starting quarterback in week 6, all right, we'll give him week 6 off because he's shaking off the rust. So we'll say from week 7 on, you look at what Jonnu Smith did in this offense. His snap count went to on average 80%. He saw no less than 3 targets per game. And with Ryan Tannehill, and his upside is definitely there if you're looking for the upside of a tight end and whether or not he can actually get there. Week 7, 3 for 64. Week 8, he had 6 receptions for 78 yards and a touchdown. And then check this out. Weeks 14, 15, and 16, Travis. 3 receptions, 5 receptions, and 3 receptions. Here are his totals. 29 yards and a touchdown, 60 yards and 63 yards. So the yardage he can get there if he gets the touchdown, you're looking at a top tight end performance. And then you look at what he did in the playoffs to continue that. He was 3rd on the team in targets. He had 6 receptions for 59 yards and a touchdown. And then Anthony Ferkser, who was also a tight end during that span, or was a tight end in the playoffs. He had 45 yards and 2 touchdowns. If that goes more towards Jonnu because he could take that step, you're looking at a tight end that could really be, a top 5, a top 3, and make that big jump this year in Jonnu Smith. I love his talent. I love his situation.
You talk about what it takes for a tight end to get to the next level. They've got to be an athletic one usually, and they've got to be drafted on like the first few days in the draft. Jonnu Smith checks those boxes. He is now set up to be the man as we've watched Delanie Walker move on, retire with this team. And if you're talking about, we talked about A.J. Brown at the top of the show. If you're talking about the questions that it gets A.J. Brown to 25% of the market share here, I honestly think there's less questions with Jonnu Smith. He's the safer option to get more of the volume in the passing game than maybe A.J. Brown, even though A.J. Brown is so talented. We've got to talk about Tannehill. If you're trying to fight the urge to love Tannehill because you just don't know if you buy that small game sample size, this is an easier sell because it's a tight end. It's easier to get the ball to your tight end a lot more.
And he's always targeted his tight end, even going back to his Miami days with Charles Clay and Cam Jordan.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot to love here with Jonnu Smith, and he's quickly becoming one of my favorite late-round tight ends.
Oh, yeah, I know he is.
But I wanted to talk about a guy towards the top of the boards that I think is just getting disrespected a little bit too much, and that's Mark Andrews, Johnny. He is going currently in the 3rd round when Travis Kelce and George Kittle are being taken in the 2nd. I'm sorry, Andrews has actually been falling to the 4th round. So I think that's a little bit too far of a gap between these two. Yeah, well, and I'll just tell you why. I think, in 2019, we saw a great year out of Mark Andrews. Fifth most targets with 98. He was first in tight end touchdowns with 10. Fifth in receiving yards, 852. He had the fifth highest yards per reception, 13.3, was getting down the field in a big way. Number one in fantasy points per pass route, and number one in deep targets. So you think tight ends are usually those guys that stay in the middle of the field, just kind of dink and dunk. Not Mark Andrews. He did all this, Johnny, on 43% of the snap share. That was 67th. 67th in the NFL last year, Johnny. You're talking about a guy that did not get a lot of snaps. So guess what? Hayden Hurst is gone. Okay. And you look at Mark Andrews last year, he was banged up too. And he only ran routes on 61% of Baltimore's dropbacks. So he did all this work on not a starting tight end snap share. Well, Hayden Hurst gone. Mark Andrews is here to step up. That's 39 targets and 219 routes run by Hayden Hurst last year that have been vacated, and now Mark Andrews gets to add that to his collection. The Ravens were trailing, Johnny, on only 19% of their offensive plays last year. That was the least amount in the NFL, which means they are going to have to pass more, and we've just basically proven that Mark Andrews is the main vein of this offense because that's what Lamar Jackson loves. He loves targeting the tight end. I think if you look at NFL history, Andrews has the 13th most receiving yards through his first 2 NFL seasons, that in NFL history. So we're talking about a guy who's doing it historically. He did it last year, and he's set up to be the man this year and be what drives this offense. And we talk about Kittle and we talk about Kelsey and we talk about their market share, and that's what makes them a second rounders and so great. Mark Andrews is set up there for that same market share, and I just love him this year.
Yeah, I love him too. He's on my dynasty team. So, but yeah, I couldn't agree more with your points you made.
Chelsea, do you have? Oh, sorry.
No, I don't have them for any of them.
Got any? You don't no tight end that you're loving?
No, she doesn't have any bromances. She just has romances.
She's not a. Oh yeah.
So
true.
That's why she said I don't have any of that.
No.
All right, so the next position we're going to talk about is the quarterback position. This is our bromance for the quarterback position. Johnny, who do you got this year? I think I know who your guy is, but I want you to tell Whisper Nation what's going on. Who you're really crushing on this year?
So the guy I'm crushing on this year was actually also the guy I ironically was having a crush on in our very first bromance episode that we ever did. And it didn't work out well. But I'm doubling down. I'm going with it again because I think it will work out this time. I'm one of those people I like, let's just try giving it another chance. Let's give this relationship one more shot and see what we can do. And that is Matthew Stafford. Give it to me. Love him this year. He was on pace for over 5,000 passing yards and 38 touchdowns before his injury. People don't realize that, and so he's going at a significant discount right now. This O-line is much improved from last year. It's right around 16. It's like middle of the pack, but if you looked at what they were last year, they were more like 25, 24 area. So that's good. They get DeAndre Swift, one of the most, that he could do both running and passing out of the backfield. So he's very dynamic. That is good for Matthew Stafford. He gets Marvin Jones back. He gets to be back and healthy after, cracking a rib and whatever else he had that kept him, from
back. Yeah, broke his back.
Yeah. So here's the best part though, and why I was so confident, because I almost was like, do I really want to give? Because I'll admit, our draft kit, when we did our premium projections, they didn't bode well for Matthew Stafford. But I said, screw it. I don't care what the projections say. Give it to me, because look at this. First 6 weeks, okay? Detroit Lions have a terrible defense. It is one of the worst in the league. Last year, they were 31st in pass attempts, 5th worst in passing touchdowns given up. They did draft some rookie defensive pieces, but again, COVID, rookies don't project an immediate impact for the defense. And look at these first 6 weeks, Travis. You have the Bears, Packers, Cardinals, Saints, Jags, and Falcons. out of all those teams, maybe the Jags might be the only team where you're like, I don't know if that will be a shootout, but all of these other games should be shootouts. So give me Matthew Stafford. I'll be off to a hot start. And then if he falls off after that, then you can maybe pivot. But I think Matthew Stafford is going to have a dynamite year. And so Matthew Stafford is my quarterback bromance for 2020.
Yeah, low key, the weapons are stacked. You've got Kenny Golladay, Marvin Jones, even T.J. Hawkinson. You talked about Swift and even Kerryon Johnson being skilled receivers.
You gotta say it with you gotta get it with the back of your Hawkinson.
I don't want to be confused with somebody with COVID, so I'm just going to keep it with the normal. Yeah. So, anyways, I think that. I think that they're set up there. They've got all the weapons to make it happen. And we saw, like you said, you painted the picture perfectly as far as a defense setting them up for game scripts that will be very profitable for fantasy football purposes.
We'll stop crushing on mine. I want to hear about your bromance at the quarterback position.
This one took a little risk on my end, but I just, the more I look at it, I can't see a situation where Daniel Jones doesn't make it as a starting quarterback, and not just a starting quarterback, but really has the opportunity to crack into the top 6 at the quarterback position because of what he's been able to do already. Last year as a rookie, 3,027 yards with a 62% completion percentage. He had the 13th most touchdowns with 24. He also added 2 rushing scores. So those touchdowns, those 24 passing touchdowns, was as much as Tom Brady last year, but more than Kyler Murray, Phillip Rivers, and Jared Goff. On a points per game basis, Johnny, he was better than Carson Wentz and Aaron Rodgers last year. He's the 11th best QB in 2019 as far as fantasy points per game. He also had the 7th most rushing yards with 279, and that was only playing in 13 games, Johnny. He did all these things only playing in 13 games. Imagine where he would have stacked up had he got a full 16. Giants last year had the 9th most passing attempts with 607. This defense did not improve that much to be a team that will be throwing less than that, in my opinion. And then you look at Jason Garrett, who is now taken over as the offensive coordinator. Newsflash, he's had long careers and long successful careers of Dak Prescott and Tony Romo for fantasy football, who were starters in their own right. Daniel Jones is pretty much set up. And then we talked about Detroit being low-key stacked. Sterling Shepard, you've got Darius Slayton, Golden Tate at the wide receiver position for the New York Giants, okay? You've got Evan Ingram, who is maybe the most athletic tight end we've got in the game right now at the tight end position. He just needs to stay healthy. And then, of course, Saquon Barkley is your running back. I mean, I just don't see how Daniel Jones doesn't have all the tools to really exceed at the position this year, and you're getting him as like the 11th QB off the board, in some instances the 13th or 14th QB off the board. So really, I just think he's got it all, and he's ready to rock and roll here. Give me Daniel Jones. Give me Danny Dimes. Plus, dude, have you seen these videos of this guy dancing? Talk about falling in love, man. This guy can really bust a move.
Hey, I do like me some Danny Dimes this year. You convinced me very, very much so that I need to trust in Danny Dimes, and I do trust you. So I like Danny Dimes.
Well, you know, Whisper Nation sitting here talking about, hey, you guys give us tight ends and quarterbacks. That's cute. But really, we want the heavy hitters. I want some wide receivers, some running backs. What are your guys' bromances? So let's start with these wide receivers, Johnny. And you talked about Matt Stafford, and you painted that picture for me. And so I've got to take his number one wide receiver, Babytron. Kenny Golladay is my bromance for the 2020 season. And look, you talk about Matt Stafford missing 8 games. Kenny Golladay didn't care. He had the most receiving touchdowns in the NFL last year with 11. He was number 1 in deep targets with 37, 6th in receiving yards with 1,190, and 4th in yards per reception, 18.3 yards per reception, Johnny, just getting down the field with great speed. Speaking of speed, he has a 110.7 speed score for Player Profiler. We love Player Profiler. We love how they're able to give us stuff. I need to remind Whisper Nation of Kenny G's specimen. 6 foot 4 inches, 218 pounds. When I say Babytron, I mean it. This guy is stacked, and we've seen over the career of Matt Stafford, the ability to funnel targets to his number one guy. I mean, just remember what he used to do with Calvin Johnson, just down the field, hucking it up. And maybe nobody throws a prettier deep ball in the NFL than Matt Stafford. I want to talk a little bit about what Johnny was talking about with and without Matt Stafford last year. There was 8 games apiece. The big stats for me, with Matt Stafford, 25.5 points per game the Lions averaged. Without him, 17.1. Okay, you're talking about red zone opportunities per game, 9.1 with Matt Stafford, 6.3 without. When Matt Stafford is healthy, and he's been cleared for this back injury that Johnny was just talking about, Kenny Golladay is really ready to be a top 5 wide receiver, and I think he could finish easily as the wide receiver 1 if he gets a full year with Matt Stafford the entire year. He's currently going in the 3rd round, but he belongs in the 2nd, and he belongs in your lineup, Whisper Nation. Kenny Golladay, give me all the shares this year.
I love Kenny G. Huge fan of Kenny G. I will say that I think there may be an opportunity based on how this season opens up. And it's kind of brutal because he'll face Prince Amukamara. Then he goes and plays your Packers, who have what's the corner? Now I'm blanking.
Jair Alexander.
Who is a very solid corner. Then he'll come to the Cardinals, where he'll face Patrick Peterson. Then he goes to the Saints, where he'll face my gosh, now I need to brush up
Marshawn
on
Lattimore.
Yeah, Marshawn. Thank you. So then he goes to the Jags. So week 5 could be or right after week 4 could be a very good buying opportunity if he doesn't come out. But I think there is a very real possibility and probability that Baby Megatron is a beast wide receiver, and it doesn't matter. He is going to get his, and I do see that as a realm of possibility because he is so talented. But Travis, I can't hold it back anymore, dude. We're at the wide receiver spot, and it's my bromance. And yeah. I can't hold myself back anymore. I got a little bit of surprise. This is gonna be like Jerry Springer, a little bit. You guys, we did share a little bit of notes before the show, and I had said originally that DJ Moore was going to be my bromance for this show at the wide receiver position. But then I just couldn't do it to Whisper Nation. I just couldn't give them.
Came to your senses.
No. It wasn't that I came to myself. I still think DJ Moore is going to be an excellent wide receiver. I love him this year. I do. But this is my bromance. Like, this is someone I am going to be attached to all year long. I'm going to be talking about all year long. And I couldn't do it to Whisper Nation. I couldn't pass up this opportunity to confess my true love for this wide receiver, and that is wide receiver Terry McLaurin out of Washington. He finished last season as the wide receiver 29 in his rookie year. He had 58 receptions on 93 targets for 919 yards, 7 touchdowns in only 14 games, Travis. This guy had an awesome connection with Dwayne Haskins because of the connection going back to his college days. So I really like that. And Dwayne Haskins is looking like he's been putting in work this offseason. He's coming in better shape. So if he can take a step forward as a quarterback, then you like what you already saw in Terry McLaurin last year, and then you never know. Sky could be the limit there. And there's no other big receiver threat to take away targets from Terry McLaurin right now. Like, they just had Kevin Harmon went down with an injury. He'll be out the rest of the season. And so he was projected to be that slot guy. We're not even sure who's going to be the tight end there. So the only guy that you can confirmly say, I know he's going to get targets, is Terry McLaurin. And last thing I'll say here, Ron Rivera compared Terry McLaurin to my other love, DJ Moore. So if you look at what DJ Moore did last year in this offense, he finished as the wide receiver 18 with Kyle Allen as the quarterback. Well, guess who the backup is for Washington now? Kyle Allen. So it gives me confidence to say that even if Kyle Allen comes in, I know that he has enough to get it done to make Terry McLaurin still be fantasy relevant. So with his ADP and where he's going, I'm going Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, I love the connection you made with DJ Moore here. The other thing to note is the offensive coordinator for the Washington football team is Scott Turner, Norv Turner's son. And so we know, and he already played this kind of role for the Carolina Panthers.
You always listen to your dad.
Well, you know that they already kind of played this role in Carolina, which means even more so that you're going to have the opportunity for Terry McLaurin to be the guy that gets funneled targets here And I love the point you made about it doesn't matter what the quarterback situation is, because Terry McLaurin has the skill and the quarterbacks to get him the ball no matter what. And look, there's just not any other talent on that team.
Yeah.
There's just really not. I mean, it's his to lose as far as being the main vein
don't
of that
be
offense.
surprised if he gets like a 30% target.
I just love his ADP too right now. He's at the back of the wide receiver 2 range. Look, I really love. There's a range of like 22 to 30 of wide receivers that I really love. That's a sweet spot. So it's really just like take your pick of some of these guys. But Terry McLaurin's as good a bet as any, and I think he's just really poised for a big year, and he's got a ton of skill. Plus, PFF talking about him being one of the highest graded rookies they've ever seen at the wide receiver position. I think the only person to score higher was maybe OBJ as far as their rookie year. So a lot of big things pointing up for Terry McLaurin. I love that pick, Johnny. Now we're the finale, the best for last here, the running backs, the heavy hitters. This is what's important. You got to be able to hang your hat on some guys, and it gets tough with running backs because you need to make a choice, and they're so volatile based on the violence of the position and the career length and things of that nature. So, Johnny, if you've got to give Whisper Nation one guy that they can fall in love with, that they can set it and forget it in their roster this year, who's it going to be for you?
This guy almost made it as my dark horse, and he would have made it as my dark horse running back earlier in the show if it weren't for this segment. I didn't want to bring his name up twice because I didn't want to rob Whisper Nation of not getting a little bit extra fantasy value in this show. So I went with the one, the only, my Bromance love of RB for a while now. That is running back for the one, the only, my Arizona Cardinals, Kenyon Drake. And it's not a fan. It has nothing to do with me as a fan loving Kenyon Drake, and that's why I'm hyping him up. It totally has to do with his production. So last year he gets traded midseason to Arizona, and I understand like he didn't do anything. He didn't do much before that because Miami, newsflash, had no idea what they were doing over there for the first half of the season. Gets traded to Arizona. From weeks 9 to 16, Kenyon Drake was the RB4 in half-point PPR. This offensive line in Arizona, most people will say, "Oh, well, it's really, really bad, Johnny. Like they're really bad." And I will say that their O-line is better than you think. Pro Football Focus ranked their O-line as like 22, which was a big jump from, or 21, which was a big jump from last year. And what I will say is you look at all the individual grades along the offensive line, and they're all pretty good, solid Bs across the board. And they are actually one of the best pass protection groups. They have solidified that offensive line by going out and getting a first-round talent at the offensive tackle position in the 3rd round, and Pro Football ranked him as the best offensive tackle or offensive tackle coming out of the draft. So Cardinals get a huge momentum swing there by getting him in the 3rd steal. And listen, they trade for DeAndre Hopkins, who is going to make it so that way the teams cannot stack the box because they're going to spread this out. So Kenyon Drake should have, very favorable matchups in the box, and I get it. You're saying all this stuff, Johnny. This was all last year with Cardinals. How do we know that he's going to repeat this? I don't know if I believe it. Cardinals could be that hype team. Well, I'll tell you what. Kenyon Drake, before he came to the Cardinals, in 3 years with Miami on limited action, I understand he only had 286 carries, but in those 286 carries, he had over 1,300 yards rushing and 9 touchdowns. He had 47 first downs, which is a huge feat for running backs. If you look at that sample size, he ranked 5th in yards per carry at 4.9. He was 4.5 all last year with Arizona, so not a huge drop-off there. He was 2nd in forced missed tackles. The only other guy was the guy that I mentioned as my dark horse, and Nick Chubb. And he was 2nd in yards after contact. So he is a very good running back. He just has not been given the opportunity. Arizona gave him that opportunity. And most people now are just saying, and the reason why he's not being drafted top 10 are because people are nervous that this was a fluke, that it was a small sample size. But I'm telling Whisper Nation now, and I'm confessing my love for him, it's not a small sample size. This guy is an elite talent at the running back position. He is this year's Aaron Jones. He is 2020's Aaron Jones. You heard it here first. I'm done. That's my bromance. That's all. I love everybody. I love it.
Yeah, look, you made a perfect case, top to bottom, for Kenyon Drake. We've been talking about Kenyon Drake pretty much nonstop on the show, trying to get Whisper Nation on board with the fact that if you don't come away from your draft with, Kenyon Drake, you're missing out on a huge opportunity, especially if you play in multiple leagues. The bottom line is the Cardinals want to run a ton of plays. They were capable of doing it last year. They're going to be even more capable of doing it this year. The opportunities alone are going to be profitable for Kenyon Drake. And then you talk about what Cliff Kingsbury has always done in his career as far as targeting the running back position, and we have an elite receiver at the running back position in Kenyon Drake. There's just so many good things to say about Kenyon Drake. I will say the one thing is I don't know if the Cardinals are sold on him as their long-term answer, given the transition tag, but it doesn't matter if you're in redraft leagues. Just buy him up right now and get after it because he is going to be majorly profitable. My running back bromance for 2020 is probably going to turn some heads here. It's probably going to get people like Travis. Why? Why would you make me do this again? I was hurt. I don't want to get hurt again. But as Michael Scott says, I think I'm ready to get hurt again. And I think I'm ready with James Conner. That's my 2020 bromance at the running back position. And I know what you're saying. Oh, this guy can't stay healthy. Look at what happened. The wheels fell off last year. He only played in 10 games. It wasn't very pretty. Only had 700 all-purpose yards or a little bit over that. Only 7 total touchdowns. He was on pace for 63 targets, though. That would have ranked 13th among running backs. Look, I think we can basically sum up what happened last year for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We've talked about it with Juju. We're going to talk about it here with James Conner. Big Ben was hurt, okay? And I am telling you right now, James Conner is in a contract year heading into an offense with Big Ben. Look, since, prior to 2019 where he had that injury, Big Ben has played in 14 or more games in 5 of the previous 6 seasons, okay? I'm going to list you, coming back from the oldest to now, Pittsburgh's starting running back finishes in those 5 seasons. RB14, RB2, RB4, RB2, and RB7. That RB7 was James Conner in just 13 games in 2018. In that span, the Pittsburgh starting running back has averaged 334 touches, Johnny. 334 touches for a starting running back. Tell me that's not a guaranteed running back one in fantasy football. You can't. Conner is in a contract year. I talked about it before. He's been working out with Le'Veon Bell. His back looks bigger than the flipping Grand Canyon right now. He's just jacked. James Conner is going in the 4th round behind guys that we've talked about before. Melvin Gordon, Leonard Fournette, Todd Gurley, Austin Eckler. Barf. Like, give me James Conner in the 4th round and tell me he's not going to at least be an RB2 and with a shot at getting you a top 5 ceiling on 300 plus touches. Yes, I get it. The health risk is there. The health risk is there for every single running back in fantasy football. If his risk is there, then if the risk is there for everyone, then give me somebody that can get you into the top 5. And I think James Conner is that guy in that offense with a healthy Big Ben.
I actually do like the James Conner pick. I think that we've seen enough from Mike Tomlin to say that, hey, if this guy is healthy, we know he's going to go with a one running back system. And to get a workhorse running back in the 4th round, like you said, that was just going in the 1st round last year. The talent is still there. It's just the injury risk is now baked in, and it's reminded me very similar of what happened to Keenan Allen a few years ago at the wide receiver position, who kept getting these injuries, and people labeled him injury, an injury concern, an injury risk. And what happened when people took him in the 4th and 5th round that year, he all of a sudden jumped up, was one of the best wide receivers because he stayed healthy, and he was going in the 2nd round the next year. So I definitely back you on the James Conner, and in that 4th round, like you said, that injury risk at that price is baked in. And so If
It just reminds me a little at the running back position of Todd Gurley prior to his number 1 years, his back-to-back number 1 years. He was coming off a knee injury out of college, and people were not very prone to want to draft him, but he was going in the 3rd round that year, and he ended up being the number 1 running back. I just think all things are lined up, at least, for Connor to be a guy that can hit the top 5. When I look at Melvin Gordon, is Melvin Gordon going to be top 5 this year, even best case scenario? I don't think so, not with Phillip Lindsay still on the roster. Leonard Fournette in that offense, I just don't see it happening. You know, Todd Gurley, I love the guy. I think he's great. I just don't know if that knee can hold up. And then Austin Eckler, we've talked about his durability. Give me James Conner. This guy is still young. He's in a contract year, and he's in an offense that projects to be one of the top ones if Big Ben stays healthy.
Yeah, great pick.
All right, so that wraps it up, Whisper Nation, but we want to know what you think. Who are some of your bromances for the 2020 season? If you like what you heard, comment below. Let us know what you got going. Hit us up in our DMs. But, Johnny, we've got to tell Whisper Nation, get over there and get our draft kit. 2020 draft kit is live. It's over on the fantasywhispers.com. We have worked so hard on this thing to get you guys everything you need in a compact form so that you can dominate your 2020 season and bring home some championships. Appreciate you, Whisper Nation, for listening in. For Johnny Game Time Hicks and Chelsea Byers, the woman behind the glass, I am Big Travy, and we are the Fantasy Whisperers. We're out. Peace.
Peace.
Good night.
Good night, Moon.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Whisperers podcast. You can hear more from John and Travis on Google Play, SoundCloud, and iTunes. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at TF Whisperers.